Remis.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Hope you had a great weekend. Welcome to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. I'm Andrew Paterson along with Michael Remis. Big show coming up today. We will recap the Winnipeg Jets draft with their director of amateur scouting, Mark Hillier, and look ahead to free agency and more coming out of the weekend with Mike McIntyre of the Winnipeg Free Press. First things first, I want to thank all our sponsors, including a new sponsor. We'll tell you about them a little bit later on, but welcome aboard, Paramount Services. Great to have you part of the ride with us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily, along with our great family of sponsors, Royal Sports, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, Not Auto Corp, Little Brown Jug, Boston Pizza, Breezy Bend, Assiniboia Downs, Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge, and Coolbet Canada. And how about that, Remis? Another milestone for us. It was a great week last week, getting to 5,000 YouTube subs, and today we officially thank everyone for being along with us as we now are into show 100. 100 in the books as of today, my friend.
Yeah, very exciting. Feels like just yesterday we started this thing out, and here we are, 100 shows in. I'll just bring myself in. Hey, everyone. How's it going?
There we go. Look who's here.
Yeah, 100 shows in. So this has been really exciting, and thank you, everyone, for coming along with the ride. We had a big milestone last week, 5,000 subs, as you said, and now here we are, 100 shows in. Great time here. Late, a lot of hockey news, too, late in July. Very nice. It's very nice.
Well, I mean, listen, there was so much to talk about coming out of the weekend. And, we spent quite a bit of time looking ahead to the draft and speaking with, scouts. And, of course, Scott Wheeler was great heading into the draft. And, I mean, listen, Remo, I know most people, you make your picks and you like your picks. But once again, it seems like the Winnipeg Jets got some pretty darn good value with their selections. And in particular, this Chaz Lucius, I mean, one of the great names, I think we can safely say. I mean, whatever he turns into as a player, he has an elite name, that's for sure. But, man, when you think about what this young man was able to do coming back from injury, the incredible offensive talents that he's shown, we'll talk about it with Mark Hillier a little bit later on. I don't know. It looks like the Winnipeg Jets got another good one at a spot that they really didn't think a player would be available.
Yeah, I totally agree. It kind of reminds me of the Perfetti pick last year where he kind of just fell. A lot of people had him ranked higher. Chaz Lucius, an amazing name.
Incredible.
I keep thinking Lucius Sweet from The Simpsons. I don't know what everyone... It reminds someone of something else. Other people had good ones. I forget. But by all accounts, the guy's got a great shot, nose for the net, knows how to score. So... I think the pick is exciting. A lot of people had him ranked, much higher than 18th or 17th. So it seems like a great pick. And the second pick is as well. And again, a player who a lot of people had ranked a lot higher than, 50th? So pretty exciting. I know the Jets, didn't have a lot of picks, only 4, which if you were covering the draft, I guess was good because they were done in round 5 as opposed to the excruciating 7 rounds that it took. But I think all the picks, have some upside. Interesting, they took, 3 Russians, which they don't normally do, but they went
2 Russians, 1 Belarusian.
Sorry.
That's not free. Yeah,
I don't want to insult anyone here. That's absolutely right, Huss. So, bit of a different year as we've talked about, but they took players that they could, they've seen, and we talked with Mark Hillier. He said they relied a lot on video. And so I think this is, it's 4 intriguing players now in the Jets prospect pool.
Yeah, so we did catch up with Mark Hillier a little bit before the program, so we'll have that for you in a few minutes, and we'll get Mike McIntyre's reaction as well, not just to what happened with the Winnipeg Jets, but what happened with the entire National Hockey League. And Reem, we'll get to some of the trades and everything else coming out of the weekend, because there was some very interesting moves. But I have to say, I don't know about you, but having spent the entire night watching the first round of the draft, you get down to the final 5 or 6 picks, and it's sort of like, okay, hurry up, let's get this thing over with. But I don't think anyone could have imagined the way that this night was going to end for the league. And I would bet anything that the most angry person on the planet around 11 o'clock on Friday night was NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman, because what we saw at the end of the first round was brutal for the league in so many ways. First of all, the Montreal Canadiens step up to the podium, and Marc Bergevin announces that the Habs are taking Logan Mailloux of the London Knights. He, of course, was the individual that was playing over in Sweden that was convicted of distributing a piece of a photo or video of a consensual act with a woman. He had said publicly that he should not be drafted last week. Now, maybe this is on the National Hockey League for not doing something to take him out of the player pool. But the fact that not only was he drafted, but the Canadiens took him in the first round, I think shocked just about everybody watching it, and certainly left a really bad taste in most people's mouths, especially Habs fans. The reaction was almost overwhelmingly negative as to why they would do it. And then that was followed up, Reem, with one of the more bizarre images you'll ever see. Chicago Blackhawks general manager Stan Bowman, with the pick that they had acquired from Columbus through the Seth Jones trade, steps up to the podium with everything hanging around the organization, is flanked by 8 women who, one of them then made the pick. I mean, this was... I don't know what's going on in that PR department over there in Chicago. I don't know who's calling the shots, but the visual of Stan Bowman almost, to a lot of people, using these women as a shield, if you will, as to what's going on around them was just a bizarre scene. And, the first round ended, and we should be talking about Owen Power and all the great players that were drafted to their respective franchises. Nobody was talking about that after Friday night. It was all about picks 31 and 32, and just a terrible way for the first night, a special night for so many people, to end. And listen, you could probably see the steam coming out of Gary Bettman's ears if you were anywhere within a few mile radius of the NHL commish.
Yeah, it was definitely shocking. Montreal making that pick, Logan Mailloux. He had said he didn't want to get picked, and I agree with you. The NHL should have done something to ensure that, okay, no one is going to pick this guy. The guy said he didn't want to get picked. Was that just like a smokescreen? Can you not withdraw yourself from the draft? Then Montreal went and picked him, and Marc Bergevin said he was the best hockey player on the board, and I think that's been the problem with the hockey culture. It doesn't matter what kind of person you are. If you can, put the puck in the back of the net and you can skate, there's a spot for you on the team. And I think they're trying to, get away from that. And it was definitely a disappointing pick. I know a lot of Habs fans extremely disappointed. And then I agree with you. The Blackhawks, PR handling of, the sexual assault has been, questionable. And I agree with you. It seemed like he was using the women up there as a shield to distract from, the horrifying stories that keep coming out about this lawsuit. Ben Pope reporting over the weekend. Just absolutely disgusting what you keep reading about that. So, I don't know. I don't know what the Blackhawks strategy was there. Like, what was the meeting?
What's been their strategy for the last 10 years? It just seems to be getting worse and worse. And listen, Stan's doing a lot right now to try to, take the, to have people maybe change what they're talking about. But that story's not going anywhere anytime soon. And man, if you saw some of the latest reporting, Ben Pope from Chicago put it out. I mean, some of the details that are coming out about what happened to this player from Bradley Aldrich while he was on the Blackhawks, while they were in the playoffs going for the Stanley Cup is, I mean, it's disgusting. And as I said, this story is far, far from over. And, there's many people that, and especially Stan Bowman, I think that'll probably be in the crosshairs as more of this comes through. Hey, shout out to everybody in chat. Great to see everyone in there. Oh, I see DQ Nick's here. And hey, the Little Brown Jug Gang is here. I'm sure you all had a couple of those LBJs on the weekend. Certainly was a nice one. And I'll tell you a little later on about a special offer we've got for you from Little Brown Jug for episode 100 heading into the long weekend. A little free delivery for you with a special code from Winnipeg Sports Talk. So, Reem, listen, there was a lot of people that left Friday night with a bad taste in their mouth. Most fans, though, focusing in on their own team. We will do that when it comes to Winnipeg Jet picks. Find out what the scouts were thinking, why these players were picked by the Winnipeg Jets, and what these young men will bring to the organization in a little bit. But let's take a minute to go through some of the big moves in the National Hockey League. And just quickly today, already a couple of contracts signed. Alec Martinez, your guy, re-ups for 3 years in Vegas. I believe at around $5 million a year. And an interesting contract, Sam Bennett gets 4 years at 4.4 per for a total of 17.6 from the Florida Panthers. A couple interesting signings today.
Yeah, the Alec Martinez one, I don't think I was too surprised by that one. I mean, they had traded for him a couple years ago, and he's played the last, fit in real nicely with Theodore, Pietrangelo, Braden McNabb. So I think that's a really good fit there, and $5 million per, it's going to take him to 37 years old, so maybe he'll be a bit older when that contract is done. But Martinez, he's been a very solid defenseman throughout his career. The Sam Bennett one, I mean, people in Calgary, I think are kind of blown away how this has worked out. He was kind of miserable in Calgary as a player. I mean, it really didn't work out. I mean, he'd bounced up and down the lineup. He was a former top pick. I think it was fourth overall in 2014. And I mean, he had struggled in and out of the lineup, up and down, and they traded him to Florida, and he went off us. 15 points in 10 games. Now, if he can, keep up that pace, I think this looks like a nice deal. But if he turns into the, goes back to the guy he was in Calgary, so where he struggled. I mean, he had 12 points in 38 games last year with Calgary. The year before, 12 points in 52 games. So he had a really tough, maybe the change of scenery was what he needed, and Florida is banking on that, and they're really going for it, Florida. I mean, they had a successful year. They got matched up with Tampa Bay in the first round and got bounced. But watch over them. They got kind of screwed by that Aaron Ekblad injury. That I don't want to say screwed, but that injury really hurt them. And any team that loses their number one defense like that, it's really tough to recover.
Well, and Florida, we'll get to some of these trades, but an interesting one. I've always sort of mixed up sometimes Sam Reinhart and Sam Bennett. Well, now we'll mix them up even more because they're both playing on the same team. And Reinhart ended up going to the Panthers in a deal that was reported breaking on Friday night. We finally found out what the terms were on Saturday. And it's interesting. It's a first-round pick next year for Buffalo. That's what Kevin Adams wanted, as well as a goaltending prospect. And with the Panthers having $10 million a year sunk into Bob, now Dreger leaving, but Spencer Knight, the young prospect, the rookie, getting an opportunity going forward. Devin Levi, who is a 7th rounder, but had that incredible run last year with Canada at the World Juniors, is the guy going the other way. So they get a good goaltending prospect. They get a first-round pick. But honestly, Reem, I was sort of surprised that the return for Sam Reinhart going back to Buffalo when you consider what Kevin Adams was able to get from Philly for Rasmus Ristolainen.
Yeah, that haul for Rasmus Ristolainen last show, Friday, we were blown away from that, and I think he's done a good job at acquiring assets. And Sam, it's funny you messed up those guys. Sam Reinhart was like the 2nd overall pick in 2014, and Sam Bennett was the 4th overall. So they are on the same squad. Bennett will probably be on the second line, and I would think Reinhart moves to the top line. However, they decide to shake it out. They did re-sign Anthony Duclair as well, who had a nice season with them. But I think Buffalo, I mean, maybe it was, I mean, I think he just set the bar so high with that Ristolainen trade. I mean, if that's what Ristolainen gets, like, what do you get for Jack Eichel, even if they try to deal him? But I think Buffalo has done a nice job restocking the players here and trading away Sam Reinhart. Was that Friday? There were so many trades
the Reinhart one, Frege broke it like late. Then even into Saturday, we knew that he was going there, but we didn't have, I don't know whether they hadn't completed the trade call or what, but they announced it in the afternoon that it was Devin Levi, the rights to Devin Levi, and a first-round pick in the 2022 draft. The other huge trade, Reem, and I mean, there was a bunch, but this Seth Jones deal, I mean, I mentioned Stan Bowman flanked, looking like the Godfather circa 90s WWE, stepping to the podium to make the pick at 32. That pick was via the Columbus Blue Jackets as part of the trade. And this is how it worked out. Chicago got Seth Jones, the 32nd pick, and a 6th rounder next year. For Adam Boqvist, the 1st rounder this year, a 2nd rounder, and a 1st rounder next year. So some major draft capital going from Chicago to the Columbus Blue Jackets. But Seth Jones then cashes in big time, Reem. $9.5 million for an 8-year extension, $76 million, I believe, making him the 3rd highest paid defenseman in the league behind Erik Karlsson and Drew Doughty. Jones did not have a great season last year. I mean, the entire Columbus team was a bit of a train wreck, as we know. Very talented young player, drafted 4th overall, traded for Ryan Johansson. Now this presumably is his home going forward. Once again, another big swing by Stan Bowman, who has got a lot on his plate right now. And even the trade and the signing of Seth Jones, I don't think took a lot of the attention on what people are really thinking first and foremost when they hear the Blackhawks right now. But they got their guy. But holy smokes, that's a major financial commitment to the young defenseman.
Yeah, big financial commitment and also big asset commitment. 2 first-round picks, a 2nd, and one of those seconds they did flip for Jake Bean and trading away Adam Boqvist. I'm not sure. This is a big gamble. I mean, Seth Jones really strong 2 years ago. He had a down year, $9.5 million. That is a lot. Cale Makar got $9 million. Now Makar was an RFA, so it was a bit, and Jones was about to hit UFA, so there is a bit of a difference there. But and he did reunite Jones with his brother, Seth Jones, with his brother Caleb Jones, and that was kind of the theme of the weekend. Brothers locking up. They also drafted Kirby Dach's brother. We mentioned Cale Makar signing the deal Friday. Colorado drafted his brother. Chaz Lucius has a brother as well. Maybe he gets drafted by the Jets next year. So we've seen a lot of... the other one was the Hughes brothers. They took Luke Hughes, New
How
Jersey.
excited was Jack Hughes when Luke got picked? I mean, he was vibrating. He was hugging him so much. He was like shaking him. It was it was a great moment, and it was pretty cool. And then of course Quinn got a nice blast at both of them and told them that the rink in New Jersey stinks. So that was a funny little family moment there with the Hughes brothers. But Jack and Luke now playing with the New Jersey Devils, and we'll just assume we'll start the clock ticking on rumors of Quinn Hughes to Jersey as well, and get the entire band together.
I'll say this: if you're in a fantasy league, you're looking for a sleeper, I think Jack Hughes. I think he's ready to break out. He's looking real strong with his underlying numbers. At 5-on-5, I think watch out for Jack Hughes in a fantasy league. He's bulked up. He's bulked up from his rookie season.
How about Voracek for Atkinson on the weekend? That was another interesting trade. Just straight up 1-for-1. Cam Atkinson at 5.6. Voracek just 3 more years at $8.25 million. Of course, Voracek played his first 3 years in the National Hockey League in Columbus, so definitely knows the organization, knows the city. It did seem like Philly was really making a concerted effort to sort of move on from that established leadership group they'd had for the past few years. Sounds like Claude Giroux will still remain there. He'll still be the captain. But Voracek was a huge part of that Flyer attack for the last few years. And, many would say maybe overpaid right now at $8.25 million. But he'll come in and, presumably try and get something going with Patrick Laine, who, of course, was qualified today at $7.5 million, as everyone expected.
Yeah, we're kind of waiting to see how that one works out. As for Philly, I'm not sure what they're doing. I mean, Ryan Ellis was a good pickup, but I mean, trading away 4 different draft picks plus Gossespierre plus Hag just to upgrade to Ristolainen. If you think that's an upgrade, who has got 1 year left, I think that's a big L move. I think that's a lot to get a player who's basically a rental, unless they re-sign him. And Ristolainen is only 26, but again, that's way too many picks to give up. They did, lose some or gain some salary in reducing Voracek to Cam Atkinson. I'm not really sure what Philly's trying to do. I mean, they had a miserable season last year. Maybe Carter Hart can play the level that you think that he's capable of. But
that's what they need.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to look at Philly's disastrous season, start in net, and then move out. I mean, I think everyone had a piece of it. But when the goaltending collapses the way that it did, you're not going to win very many hockey games. And I mean, that was a huge story. It's hard not to talk about the Flyers and the season and the moves they're making this year without mentioning just how big of a drop-off Carter Hart had last season. But certainly that organization expects him to bounce back next year. And presumably, with Ellis and Ristolainen on the blue line, Chuck Fletcher at least is hoping that he's given his team a better opportunity of helping their goaltenders out in front of him. Whether that's the case, we won't find out until October.
Yeah, Chuck Fletcher seems like a guy, he's like, screw it, I'm just going to trade all these draft picks. We got to win right now, and I don't care what happens in the future because I may not be here when those draft picks come to fruition. And that might be a theme that happened with Jim Benning in Vancouver.
Absolutely.
For their big trade, which I'm still torn as to the winner of that trade. So they traded, I have it up here, Vancouver got Ekman Larson, who's got a long contract at $7 million cap hit, and Connor Garland for Antoine Roussel, Jay Beagle, Louis Eriksson. So basically 3 bad expiring contracts that are $12 million for a first this year, second next year, and a 7th in 23. I mean, I know those contracts were not great, but they were expiring, and now you just took on Ekman Larson, who's got a pretty high contract, but Connor Garland could be the one, for a first-round pick. I think that one could be the guy that surprises you in that deal. We don't know a lot about him because he's buried in Arizona by all accounts at a great season, so you're basically getting him for a first and then swapping bad contracts. So I don't know, maybe it could work out for Vancouver, but again, Jim Benning is a guy, he's doing all these quick fixes. It worked for 1 year, the JT Miller trade, but he keeps dealing first-round picks. I don't really think it makes them that great of a team, but they are in that terrible division.
It makes them way better this year. I don't think there's any doubt. I mean, Louis Eriksson stinks. He can't even really crack the lineup on a normal basis. And I mean, honestly, Eriksson, Beagle, and Roussel are 3 of the worst UFA deals we've seen signed in the league in a long time. And that says something. I mean, the Louis Eriksson trade has been an absolute albatross there. And then, I mean, to sign 2 fourth liners to $3 million deals, that's killed them too. And they just haven't got a lot from those guys. So to be able to rid all of those contracts off the books this year and bring in Ekman Larson and Connor Garland, I don't think there's any doubt the Vancouver Canucks are a better team next season. And to be honest, that's what Jim Benning's looking at, Reem, because this is an all-in move. I mean, if they aren't significantly better next year, the rest of the stuff doesn't matter because Jim Benning is going to be packing. I mean, he'll get a pink slip. He won't be around. So, I mean, I get the aggressive nature of this. And listen, they still think that OEL has a lot to give. Now, I mean, I didn't watch a lot of Arizona last year, but I do remember him being one of the top defensemen in the league. Certainly wasn't that last year. And it seemed like there was a bit of a falling out with the Coyotes. That was a miserable situation to be around. And for a guy that's been there a long time, the change of scenery might do wonders for Ekman Larson. And of course, he does make $8.25 a year. The Coyotes are handling 12% of that, so it'll be about a $7 million cap hit. But yeah, I mean, with 6 years on it, the Vancouver hopes that they get the player that the Coyotes thought they were signing when they gave him that 8-year extension. And if that's the case, Garland is certainly a player. I mean, he will make the Canucks better in the short term. And as we mentioned, if they're not better in the short term and they're not better this year, they're going to probably blow it up again, and there'll be a new GM to come in and deal with the fact that, Well, they've already had a bunch of picks traded away. They don't have a first rounder this year. But to have Connor Garland come in as that pick, I don't think there's any doubt that's a win. The Garland part of the deal is certainly a win. Everything else has more to do with the cap, getting money off the cap, and a pretty significant commitment to a defenseman that may or may not be playing at a top level as the contract continues.
Yeah, I understand they need to free up some salary this year. They got to sign Quinn Hughes. They have to sign Elias Pettersson. And there's also a lot of rumors about Nate Schmidt. Could he be on the move? Braden Holtby. He's got an expiring, he's got 1 year left too. So we'll see what happens with Vancouver. They're an interesting team that I said a couple of years ago that they really don't know what direction they're going in. They're a team that's like barely a playoff team, making all these moves that teams that are trying to win now make. And it worked for them 2 years ago where they had the bubble playoff run, but last year they fell on their face. I know they had the COVID issue at the end of the season, but even before that, they're going nowhere.
Yeah, Mitch popped in, hey, I'm an AZ guy, and I loved OEL, but that contract will kill them. OEL is not good anymore. Last couple of years. Will he rebound? I'm not sure. Certainly from a Canucks standpoint, they expect that he will. They're counting on him doing that, and certainly Garland, adding quite a bit and, getting those slugs off the team and at least being able to move forward. I mean, essentially, they've taken three problems, putting it into one deal, added a strong player, and it's up to them to win, to make the playoffs, to do something this year. Or as we mentioned, Jim Benning's probably not around anytime soon. Another interesting trade, Reem, on the weekend that maybe didn't get the ink that some of the others was between the New York Rangers and the Blues, and Pavel Buchnevich heading to the Central Division. He'll be playing for St. Louis after they traded a second rounder next year. And Sammy Blais, who was such a big part of that cup-winning team, I remember Blais, when the first round started against Winnipeg, wasn't even in the lineup, popped in later on in the series, was really good, and that was an impact player. But this trade, as far as Buchnevich goes, has a lot to do with cap. It seems like the Rangers are in on everybody trying to make things happen, and obviously you have to have cap room for all those things. So Buchnevich moves on. They get a cheaper, younger player in Blais and a second-round pick, and St. Louis gets a nice boost to their offensive attack with Buchnevich coming in from Manhattan.
I really like this trade for St. Louis. Buchnevich, I mean, he had a great season last year. 48 points in 54 games. He was one of the top scorers. And if they trade Tarasenko, I mean, he's the guy who can step in. Sammy Blais, a third-line player. I mean, he's making cheaper salary. I think for the Rangers, this is a big salary, more like a salary dump. I know they signed Barclay Goodrow to that long deal. The Rangers think, they saw Tom Wilson, smash their heads in. And they need to get all these grinder type players and none of these scorers. So I'm not sure how it's going to work for them. We'll see if they can, there's so many rumors about the Rangers. They're rumored to be on every player, and most notably Jack Eichel. So let's wait and see what happens with them. But I think this is a big win for St. Louis, especially if St. Louis trades Tarasenko here in the upcoming days.
Yeah, okay, so listen, we'll talk more about all these moves on the weekend and the Winnipeg Jets with Mike McIntyre coming up in a few minutes. Coming up right now, though, we did speak with Mark Hillier, the Jets director of amateur scouting. So we'll get to that in just a minute. But as I mentioned right off the top of the show, we have a new sponsor to welcome to the Winnipeg Sports Talk family. And big thanks to Evan and Carrie at Paramount Services Limited for coming on board with us. It's great to have you guys part of the Winnipeg Sports Talk team. If you're wondering about Paramount Services, Paramount Services Limited is a full facility maintenance company serving commercial, HVAC, plumbing, electrical, and handyman services to all of your favorite convenience stores and restaurants in Western Canada, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, for the past 28 years. If you were looking for a one-stop shop for kitchen or cooler supplies for your business or property in Western Canada, give them a call and ask for Carrie O'Brien, or you can visit their website at ParamountServicesLTD.com for more information. If you're listening on the podcast, Room's got the website up right here. Number is 204-789 9099. And you can also go to winnipegsportstalk.com. If you click on the sponsor tag, you'll have a link there. And the other thing that Paramount Service is looking for right now is people. They're always looking for qualified techs who specialize in HVAC, plumbing, electrical, and handiwork. You can go to the website and submit your resume today. Or as I mentioned, you can give Carrie a call at 204-789-9099. We'll throw in the link for the careers bit into the chat, as well as you can hit it up on the website right now. So great to have Paramount Services aboard. Carrie, Eben, thank you so much. Great to have you on board. And folks, if you or someone you know has some experience and looking for a great new job, paid well, benefits, all that stuff, click on the careers section at Paramount Services and you can get on board. And it's not just in Winnipeg, by the way. They are big throughout Western Canada. So if you happen to be listening in Saskatchewan, for instance, or even in Alberta, click on it, see whether there might be a great spot for you to move forward in a career with Paramount Services. Again, the website, ParamountServicesLTD.com, and the number is 204-789-9099. Big shout out to our friends at Royal Sports. The countdown is on to Blue Bomber kickoff. Popped in on the weekend, some great Blue Bomber merchandise, and I'll be honest, I saw those Jets jerseys as well and wondering, which of the Jet draft picks will be the first one to get on a jersey out at Royal Sports? Pop down and see. And when it comes to licensed merchandise, they are the all-time greatest store. NBA, NHL, Major League Baseball, CFL, NFL, they've got it all. And while you're there, check out the expanded camping section. You can get that Jets Yeti mug you've been thinking about getting. An expanded fitness section. Bikes coming in weekly despite the worldwide bicycle shortage. It really is a one-stop shop for all things. And of course, hockey season coming up. They are the hockey superstore as well. Royal Sports, 650 Rally EK and 750 Pembina Highway. And we saw our pal Nick here from the Nick and Nicky DQ group, at DQ Niverville, DQ Northgate, DQ Polo Park, and DQ St. Anne's. Nick made a little drop off to me earlier. I had one of those, the fudge bars. Had not tried those yet. Had it on the weekend. Was amazing. I still am partial to the Buster bar. I think it's the best novelty. But when you're popping in, you probably want a Blizzard. The Kit Kat Blizzard is back. I'm personal to the drumstick. And I will maintain, I had the Ultimate Grill Burger on the weekend. Just an absolutely incredible sandwich. So there you go. Pop by any of the 4 Nick and Nicky DQs. And if you're having an event, maybe an August long weekend party or getting people together, hit them up on Instagram at DQ Manitoba. You can order your cake in advance and then simply pick it up at one of the 4 Nick and Nicky DQ locations. Great to have Nick and Nicky on board, Royal Sports. And of course, big thanks to our newest sponsor, Paramount Services Ltd. All right, coming out of draft weekend, we always like to catch up with Jets Director of Amateur Scouting, Mark Hillier, on the players that were picked by the Winnipeg Jets. And we started off the conversation just asking Mark how he thought the weekend went.
Well, we think it went good. As you talked to all the head scouts right after the draft, they'll all think they did had the best haul or whatever. But we think from we only had 4 picks, but we got some good value picks there, so we're happy about it.
Let me ask you this. I mean, we've done this for a number of years, kind of getting together after the draft to talk about the players and the process. From your perspective, being the Director of Amateur Scouting, just what a crazy year this was and how difficult it was to prepare. I mean, how can you compare what you guys went through this season to previous drafts?
Yeah, it was different for sure. I hope we don't have to go through it again. I think we were fortunate to be working through the pandemic. First of all, the organization treated us well. We know others weren't so fortunate through this past year, but we made a commitment early on to go at the video hard. Where borders were closed, lots of restrictions. We couldn't get to Europe, but the leagues hadn't started in North America yet. So we really went out the European video hard in the first half of the year. We kept at it all year long, and then got to as many live views as we could where the restrictions, let us do that. We had a good mix at the end of the year with live views and video and, just everybody pitching in. So we put a good list together, and I thought we added 4 good players here.
It's the second year of virtual drafts, but again, it was a very different year because of how many players weren't playing. Actual draft day, how similar was draft day to a normal draft year? I mean, you're together, just not at the table on the draft floor. Was there some other challenges or differences maybe in 2021?
Right. So, I mean, the draft day was the same experience as it was a year ago with the virtual draft, like you said. The unfortunate part about it is, for scouts, it's the biggest day of the year. They don't get a lot of recognition during the season, and that's their day to shine, so to speak. You can't replace the atmosphere of the draft floor in a regular year. The excitement, the anxiousness, the pressure that the draft floor brings. It's really a unique, electric atmosphere. And with the border restrictions, again, we couldn't bring everybody still into Winnipeg for the draft. So, I was the one there representing the staff, but, we try to keep in close touch and talking on the Zooms and all that right through the draft as much as we could, but it's still not the same for the scouting staff for sure.
Mark, last year, it seemed like the Jets had some good fortune when Cole Perfetti sort of fell into their laps at number 10, and we know what an exciting and a great year he had for such a young player. Was it sort of similar this year when you had Lucius on your Chaz Lucius on your list and kind of seeing what happened in the picks before you guys were on the clock?
Yeah, we thought, well, first of all, with Perfetti, we really did think he fell into our lap there. We went through so many different scenarios of the top 10 in that list. And, you're always doing extra work leading up to the pick. And he wasn't a guy we did a lot of extra work on because we just didn't think he was going to fall there. Lucius had the injury and only played, I believe it was 12 or 13 games this season. So we thought there was a chance he could be there. We thought it was an outside chance, but we still thought there was a chance, and we were hoping that, he might slide to our pick.
Well, tell us about Chaz. I mean, what sort of players come to the Jets organization, and what does he bring to the organization that excited you guys to call his name?
Well, obviously, he's a special offensive player. He plays center ice. He right shot, great release and scoring touch. He thinks the game extremely well, processes the offensive game really, really quickly. He's an explosive goal scorer and make plays. And, we think he needs to get bigger and stronger, fill out his 6'1" frame. We think the skating and quickness will all come as he gets stronger and grows into his body, and going to a good program in Minnesota for at least a couple of years, I would think. And in a couple of years, I would think we're going to have a pretty special player here. What
were the interviews like with him?
They were good. He's a good, respectful kid. What we found that I guess I didn't know before, he's kind of, I don't know if it's the right term, but sort of like a hockey nerd, like a Mark Scheifele type of thing, that he lives, breathes, sleeps hockey. It's all about getting better and working every day in different avenues to get better. He mentioned Mark Scheifele as a guy he really looks up to. And, there's obviously some similarities in their game. But he just came across as a really driven kid, a kid that, just looking at all those different things to get better each and every day.
I got to give him credit. I mean, you want to get picked by the Winnipeg Jets, mention that your idol's Mark Scheifele is probably a good place to start, and certainly a great player to emulate yourself afterwards. Second round went over to Russia, and it was interesting. A couple Russian players selected, and, I guess Burden in the past, and Pavel Kraskovsky, I think, was the only Russian skater that the team had picked before. Tell us about Nikita Chibrikov and why he was a good fit for you guys in the 2-hole.
Yeah, well, again, we think it was good value there. When you're leading up to the draft, you're having your meetings, pretty much every day, and it drives me crazy in the last week just going through all the different scenarios and what could be available in each different round, and going through my double and triple checks on everything. didn't think he would be there in the first round. Or in the second round. He was just outside our range of the first round pick. So we went through all those different scenarios of the type of player that would be available in the second round to us, and he wasn't really in those conversations. But after the first day, when we get back to the war room there and are discussing all the different scenarios, we had to talk about him because he's an ex-player on our list that hasn't been taken. And we didn't think he'd get to the second pick. There's still 17 more selections to be made. But just went through all the questions with all the scouts, like why shouldn't we take this guy? Why hasn't he been picked? And just despite the passport or where he's from or any issues with that, like he was just too good of a player to pass up. And we think he's got 2 years left on his contract there to develop in a good spot. And hopefully we'll get him over in 2 years and he'll be ready to go.
What sort of a player is he? I mean, what would he project, if things go well? I mean, when you look at him, what sort of an NHL player could he be?
Well, he's a real smart, crafty player offensively. He gets in the offensive zone. He's got really good vision and instincts, sees the ice extremely well, good combination of playmaker and scoring ability. Sometimes he's one of those guys that you don't notice as much, but at the end of the game, he's always got 2 or 3 points. Like he finds a way to produce offense and create offense. Real slippery in the offensive zone. He's a quick darter in and out of holes. Just a really high IQ offensive player.
Third pick was Dmitry Kuzmin, a Belarusian defenseman in the third round. What can you tell us about Kuzmin?
He's an interesting player. Like we didn't know much about this guy leading up to the under-18 tournament in Texas at the end of the year. But Belarus ended up having 3 pretty good players on their team there. So they were a team we watched quite a bit when we got there. He jumped out at us right in the first game. I think the first game he might have scored the lacrosse type goal. So, it was something to talk about there for sure. But he's a dynamic player, smart. I think I said before, he's a 5'10" defenseman, but when you watch him, you don't see a small player. You just see a good player. He's very intelligent. He skates well. He moves the puck. He creates offense. He runs the power play, and he's really got good character and intangibles in that as well. So, we know it's always a challenge for a smaller defenseman to play. The game's changing, but you still have to be a pretty special player. But we think, he has the ingredients to be that type of player. And, he's coming over to the OHL to develop for the next couple of years. So hopefully we've got a good one there.
Mark, one final pick was Dmitry Rashevsky, another Russian. Tell us about your 5th rounder.
Yeah, again, he was a guy that I think is a real intriguing pick. We noticed him. We know a year ago he scored 44 goals in the top junior league in Russia, the MHL, which is a really good league. It's comparable to CHL leagues. He's really smart offensively. Obviously, he has really good hands, a good shot. He plays in good direct lines. We think he's a late bloomer physically. He's come a long way in the last year with strength, power, getting stronger. Skating has come along with that, where I think he's a good skater now. And this past season, he played a combination of KHL games, VHL, which is the pro league below the KHL, and some junior games as well. And we did a lot of work on him. We just think he's a real good value pick. He has a lot of offensive upside. He has 1 year left on his contract there, so we're hoping, at the end of that, we'll get him over to develop with the Moose and see where it can go.
Well, I have to ask you, Mark, and again, this might be a difficult question for you to answer because I'm not sure how things work when you're deciding on whether to, trade a pick or trade down. But, you see what Carolina was doing where we were joking. I think they had like half the picks in the last 3 rounds of the draft. Was there lots of talk about maybe getting more picks? And then when it comes to your selection with the players and the value that are on the board, he kind of made, hey, we got to make this pick. Let's not worry about getting any more. This is the guy we want.
Right. I think analytically, the analytics crowd will tell you that more picks, you have a chance to be more successful, obviously. It's not always my feeling. Like, I think if you have a chance, say, to get an A player is better than 2 B players. But leading up to every pick, we look at every different scenario. When we're 10 picks away from our pick, we say, can we move, or can we move up? Can we move back? Should we pick? And we're doing that continuously throughout the draft. So we look at that at every pick. We did look at it a little more with the last pick because we thought Rashevsky might be hidden a little bit and higher on our radar maybe than most. So we thought if we can grab an extra pick and still take Rashevsky, that would be a good thing for us. But there wasn't a trade out there at that point. So, we just thought we need to take the player there and still think that, it's a good pick.
All right, we're in Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Mark Hillier, the Winnipeg Jets Director of Amateur Scouting. So yesterday's a travel day. You're back on the rock. What is the week after the draft like for you? And you're right back at it in a week for the Ivan Holinka.
Right. We've got scouts all working this week already and working last week at tournaments. There's the under 18 and under 20 starts this week in Calgary. So we've got guys there. There's the under 20 in Plymouth, Michigan, with Finland and Sweden and USA. So we have people there. Lucius is playing there. Our kid Torgerson is playing there too, which is, I'm really anxious to see how he plays there. He's a kid that hasn't played in probably 16 months. I think it was the day after we drafted him, he sustained a knee injury. And he's a real interesting player, 6'4", 220-pound winger that we're really have high hopes for. So he's there with the Sweden under 20 team. And like you said, we're preparing to leave on the weekend for the Olinka, which is in Czech and Slovakia. And of course, there's we have to go through all the border restrictions, and we land in one country in Austria, and we have to drive to Czech Republic and then drive to Slovakia. So each country has a different regulations that we have to be up on and make sure we have clearance to cross the borders and all that type of thing. So like you said, we're right back at it and preparing for next year.
Well, Mark, this has been awesome to have you on the program. I do have to ask you just before we go, and this goes back to a conversation we had 5 years ago. 2016 draft, everyone's all excited about Patrik Laine, and then you make the pick for Logan Stanley. And I've told this story on the show many times as we've talked about Stanley and his development over the last few years, that on that day, like an hour after he was picked, you sat down with us and pretty clear that this was a very different first round selection, and said that, he's going to go back to junior for a couple of years. He's going to go and play in the American Hockey League for a couple of years. And in 4 years, we should see what sort of a player we have. The timeline is different on Logan Stanley. You pretty much nailed it. It was 2 years. It was 2 years. He came and had a great rookie season. From a scout's perspective and a guy that was, in the room as part of that pick, what's it been like watching Logan follow that development path and break in with such an impactful rookie year on the Jet Blue Line last season?
Yeah, it's been great to watch his development there. And you're right, we had the right idea on his development. Everybody develops at different rates. We knew he needed time. A 6'7" kid, he's got to grow into his body, and it takes time. He pretty much progressed, like you said, on the rate that we thought was going to happen. You just have to be patient. Sometimes, these players that we took yesterday, they're all players for the future. They're not going to be in the Jets uniform next season or probably the season after. Like, it takes time, and we know it was going to take time with Logan. We did see some special things on him. When he played as an underage, the like the progression he made there as an underage player was outstanding. And we thought if he can make half of that progression after we're drafting him, we could have a special type scenario here. And it's hard to find these big guys that can play, and you just have to be patient. And we're obviously really happy with how he played this year, and hopefully he can still take another step and bring his game a little further.
Well, Mark, listen, thanks so much for the time. I know Jet fans, certainly from everything we've been reading about these 4 selections on the weekend, pretty excited. And obviously the track record of the Jet scouting department gets people fired up for draft weekend each and every year. Get the laundry done, put it back in the suitcase, and enjoy the time on the road at the Hlinka.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks a lot, guys. Take care.
Great. All right, there was our chat with the Jets Director of Amateur Scouting, Mark Hillier. Yeah, Mitch, I would have asked about the timeout, but we hooked up with Mark because of travel a little bit before the program. But I always enjoy the chat with Mark after the draft each and every year. And I know I talked so much about our chat with him after the Stanley pick 5 years ago. Thought we'd get to that as well. But thanks so much to Mark for joining us here on the program. All right, we're going to stay with the Jets. Mike McIntyre coming up in just a sec. Do want to thank our friends at Boston Pizza for their support of Winnipeg Sports Talk from the get-go. Of course, summer is here. The patios and restaurants are open once again. And when you return to BP, make sure to check out the new summer menu, including the Burger Italiano and the Honey Dill Fried Chicken Sandwich. And whether you're in the lounge, in restaurant, or on the patio, some amazing summer cocktails as well. The Bulldog Margarita Fish Bowl, the White Sangria Smash, the Galaxy Fish Bowl, and the Peachy Mojito Royale. Check it out at your local Boston Pizza coming up this week. And hey, a big thanks to our friends at Little Brown Jug. Just got a word from my pal Dustin over at LBJ that got a little special offer for the 100th episode today. I know many of you are already making plans for the upcoming August long weekend. And up until July 31st, we've got a special promo code for Winnipeg Sports Talk listeners, WST100, for free delivery on your eligible home delivery order. The minimum is $35. Just basically go to Little Brown Jug, the website, and it's easier than ever, as we've been talking about it, far easier than ever to order the delicious taste of Little Brown Jug to get it right to your home. We've got merchandise as well. Those 1919 koozies are incredible. I would suggest you add one of those. But whatever your order is, put in the promo code WST100. It'll save you the trip to the beer store. But if you were going to head out, don't forget the patio and the tap house is open right now. So you can also pop down and see them on William Avenue. But up until the 31st of July, use promo code WST100 for free home delivery from our friends at Little Brown Jug. Website again is littlebrownjug.ca, or see them at their HQ over on William Avenue. And of course, Not AutoCorp with us from day one. Big thanks to Trevor and the Not Gang. If you're thinking about a new vehicle for you and your family, why not get a great deal on the car of your dreams at a great price with the help of the Not team? Pop down and see them at Waverly and McGillivray, or check them out online at not.ca. And if you're in a vehicle right now that you need to sell or get out of a lease, talk to them about their very successful consignment program to help you get maximum value for your vehicle while moving into the new whip for you and your family. Again, Not AutoCorp, Waverly and McGillivray, and online at not.ca. All right, let's get back to the Jets right now and welcome in our pal Mike McIntyre from the Winnipeg Free Press. Mike, how was the weekend? Lots going on in the hockey world, that's for sure.
Yeah, sure was. Happy 100th, by the way.
Thank you.
Proud to be a part of this milestone episode. Yeah, busy weekend. You know, it's funny. The Jets and Not AutoCorp, they missed a great sponsorship opportunity. I don't know if you saw the name of a player that got drafted on Saturday. His name is Cameron Why Not?
Yes.
Imagine if the Jets had taken him, what we could have done with that.
T-Knot would have been on the phone immediately to get him signed up. Hey, listen, before we talk about the picks and the deals, I have to ask you, I'm still somewhat stunned at what we saw at the end of the first round.
Oh.
I mean, the Habs taking Milieu in the first round, 31st overall, I thought was, just a horrible look. I know, talking to some people that are close to folks in NHL circles that the commissioner was absolutely nuclear after what had happened. And to be honest, they hadn't publicly committed to the draft going to Montreal next year. I'm not sure that would be happening. And then to go from that pick at 31 to Stan Bowman channeling the Godfather from 90s WWE, being flanked by 8 women who essentially were PR human shields. It's hard to imagine, Mike, that evening ending on a worse note for the National Hockey League. And we should be talking about Owen Power and Luke Hughes and all the young men. Everyone was talking about the Habs and Blackhawks and how both tone deaf and terrible everything looked.
Yeah, it absolutely ended with a thud. And the optics, of course, were horrible. And in the case of the Mailloux, I mean, both those examples you just cited were absolute self-inflicted wounds. Let's talk about the pick. First of all, that was a reach to take that player where they did anyways. I mean, based on projections, they were a lot better. Let's forget about everything else for a second. Just from a hockey player perspective, there were better players available, which makes it even more asinine that Montreal did what they did. A guy that literally renounced himself from the draft days earlier. And for them to actually then say, well, it was that act which kind of sold us on the player, that was the reason we believe this kid is worth taking a chance on. I mean, who are they to, if he himself, the player who committed this horrible crime, is saying, I'm not ready to take on the responsibility of getting drafted. If he's saying he's not ready, who the hell are the Montreal Canadiens to insert themselves into this situation and say, actually, we're going to help you, kid. We're going to hold your hand and kind of get you to where you need to be here. It was awful. And, Marc Bergevin, of course, has connections to the 2010 Blackhawks team. He was the director of player personnel. I was on that Zoom call during the Stanley Cup final where Marc Bergevin was asked about what he knew. And he issued a very strong denial, said, I didn't know anything. Contrast that, by the way, with what even someone like Kevin Cheveldayoff said in his statement last week, where he admits that he knew or he heard about the allegations against Brad Aldrich prior to Aldrich leaving the Chicago organization in 2010. How Marc Bergevin can say that he knew nothing. I mean, again, he's the director of player personnel. But the symmetry of going, Bergevin and the Blackhawks to now this pick and a bunch of other things that Montreal's done over the years. I mean, Huss, it wouldn't surprise me now. They may as well go out and sign Tony DeAngelo on Wednesday, right? Like just double and triple down on all of this awfulness. But yeah, then to transition right into the Blackhawks pick and Stan Bowman, the man who, frankly, he shouldn't even be in that position right now. I'd say at the very least, and my buddy Ken Campbell, he wrote the other day that at the very least, Bowman should be on a leave right now while these allegations are investigated. But to turn that into a PR stunt the way they did, it's just the whole thing just left a terrible taste in the mouths. And the NHL one step forward and a couple massive steps back in those scenarios.
Yeah, it was a tough look for the league. It was unfortunate. It took a lot of the shine away from what was a special night for a lot of young men that got picked. And as I mentioned, Gary Bettman, Bill Daly, I think would have been just nuclear with their anger for the way things played out. That being said, we just talked to Mark Hillier, and he sort of told us about the 4 young men that the Winnipeg Jets selected. We knew that they were coming into this with 4 picks. I thought that there might be some trading down, maybe trying to accumulate a few more picks. We talked about that with Mark. Bottom line is they got to their slot in the first round, jumped at Chaz Lucius, and then really, from hearing what Mark had to say, they had considered maybe going that way, but when the players that were available to them were available at those picks, they went straight to the podium and made them. First thoughts at the class of 2021.
Well, yeah, I mean, but we won't really touch too much on the last two players. I think they're further away, and we'll see what they end up being. But if the Jets can hit a home run on their first two picks in Lucius and Chibrikov, two very intriguing players for sure, and two players, frankly, Huss, that they got terrific value on in terms of where the consensus was that these guys were going to go. I mean, Chibrikov was seen as a first rounder. And perhaps the issue of having 2 more years in the KHL and whether they could, teams could get him over here, that probably caused his stock to drop. Just as if with Lucius, that injury he had, the surgery and the fact he missed a good chunk of his season, that no doubt caused him to tumble out of what might have been a top 5, top 10 pick. If you're the Jets, you have to be very excited. I wrote a piece in today's Winnipeg Free Press just about specifically the center ice position and how things have changed around here in less than a calendar year. Think of all the debate and discussion we've had about the Jets and the center ice position. And of course, Brian Little's, very unfortunate season and career-ending injury really sped up the urgency for the Jets to try and fill some holes up the middle. And we saw a bunch of people paraded in here, right? Paul Stastny by trade, Kevin Hayes, Cody Eakin, Stastny again. We've seen Andrew Kopp play center. We saw Jack Roslovic, like all these stopgap measures. And while it won't necessarily help them for the coming season, you look at what the Jets now have and their last 2 first-round picks in Cole Perfetti and Chaz Lucius. Add to that the fact they brought in 22-year-old Pierre-Luc Dubois. And the Jets have one heck of a succession plan in place for when, Mark Scheifele, who's 28, and Adam Lowry, who's 28, like when those guys are gone, and I'll throw in David Gustafsson as well, just won the Manitoba Moose, MVP. He's only 21. Like, it is not hard at all to envision in a few years from now, some combination of Perfetti, Lucius, Gustafsson, and Pierre-Luc Dubois as being, what the Jets have up the middle. And, I asked Mark Hillier on the Zoom the other day after the draft ended about building a team. And he said, like, building at the center ice position is such a key, and it really is. And, add to that what the Jets have done with the likes of Sandberg, Heinola. They've got some other young guys, Gavanke, Kovacevic. Like, the blue line and the center ice position, which I think for a while were big holes in the prospect pool. The Jets now have some very, very intriguing pieces to set them up for the future.
No doubt about it. Mike McIntyre with us from the Winnipeg Free Press here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. So, Mike, moving out of the weekend, there was a ton of big trades in the league, and we can maybe get to those in a minute. The Jets weren't involved in any of them. They used their picks. They made their selections. They've seen some other players that maybe I would assume they would have been interested in, whether it was an Alexiak or an Adam Larson, signed deals and won't be coming to market. Wednesday's a big day. Free agency opens. How do you see the Winnipeg Jets attacking Wednesday? Where will they be going? Who will the targets be?
Yeah, and I think you can add Rasmus Ristolainen as a name. The Jets were certainly in on that as well. And ultimately the Flyers, they paid a price that a premium for sure, one that the Jets, probably wisely avoided. This is a guy who think. Yeah, I mean, this is sometimes the best moves you make are the ones you don't make, right? And I think that's an example.
Just the return on Ristolainen, just quickly on that Philly deal, was stunning in that. Yeah. I mean, I think they got more for Ristolainen with 1 year left than they did for Sam Reinhart, which was somewhat surprising. But I mean, I know there's a couple Buffalo guys that said there is no way I believe the quote was, if Kevin Adams is able to extract a first-round pick from somebody for Ristolainen with his current contract status, they'll be doing your run nude around the arena. And, maybe want to hide your eyes because that's exactly happened. I mean, a first and a second and Hag was a return that I don't think anybody saw coming.
Yeah, I mean, an act of public indecency, and I'd say the only thing more indecent was what the Flyers gave up for a guy. I mean, give this to Philadelphia. They are not dull at all. Like, they are, they brought Ryan Ellison. Like, they're retooling that team on the fly, and never a dull moment for sure. Very different, of course, here in Winnipeg, where we don't get a lot of blockbusters. And, it's interesting. I wrote a piece that ran in Saturday's Free Press Huss about the idea of free agency and trades. And Elliot Friedman last week had a really interesting point in a blog that he wrote. And it goes along with something that I've been hearing, more and more from agents. That is the difficulty Canadian teams, and the Jets would certainly be at the top of this list, in just getting a lot of these players. Like, you look at all the blue liners who've moved in the last 2 weeks, and it is an incredibly long list. There have been a lot of defensemen change teams, right? And the Jets would certainly have had interest in a number of those blue liners. You can, from Ryan Ellis and Ryan Graves and Nick Leddy, like just go all over that list. All of those guys would have looked really good on the Jets blue line this coming season. Winnipeg really didn't have a sniff of any of them. And, Elliot talked about some of the factors, certainly the tax situation in Canada versus a lot of these U.S. states. He talked about, COVID protocols, that's actually scaring some teams away. Players don't like how restrictive maybe things are in Canada. And another one that I found really interesting was the idea, and I've heard this in the past as well, social media and the spotlight, and that a lot of players are saying, you know what, it just ain't worth it. And we saw that here in Winnipeg, right? Go back to the Montreal series and Mark Scheifele and Jake Evans. Look at the way that Scheifele's family and some friends and stuff, like the vitriol that came their way. I just think you don't see that necessarily in a lot of U.S. markets.
Mike, that wasn't just from social media. That was from actually somewhat so-called legitimate Montreal media as well. It was insane.
It was. And so all of these are challenges. And it's interesting. It goes back to why the draft is so important for an organization like the Jets. And fortunately for Winnipeg, they've hit it out of the park with a lot of their previous picks, and they certainly hope they've got some real, pillars for the future here. But you can't just be a one-trick pony. You can't build a Stanley Cup champion strictly on drafting and developing. At least I don't think you can. You need to supplement that with some trades that pay off and some shrewd free agent signings. And those are areas the Jets have had some difficulty in. And so I'm fascinated to see what Winnipeg does, on Wednesday. For one thing, they're going to have to sign a lot of players because they have, and whether it's some of their own guys that they bring back, UFAs, or just new faces, there are holes all over this lineup. And I'm specifically looking at the bottom six right now. The Jets' entire fourth line last year, at least what was traditionally their fourth line of Perreault, Thompson, Lewis. All those guys are UFAs, right? You've got, Paul Stastny is a UFA. They lost Mason Appleton to Seattle in the expansion draft. Like, that's 5 regular forwards last year that were in their top 12. Who's filling all those spots? I'm sure they'd like guys like Vesalainen and Gustafsson and maybe Perfetti to compete. But I don't think you go into training camp with those guys, automatically gifted spots. So they're going to have to get some volume in terms of re-signings. And then on the blue line, Tucker Poolman, Derek Forbert, who I think Elliot reported last night is probably going to Boston. I'm really curious to see if Poolman is a guy that they potentially bring back, one of their own drafted and developed players, right, who's a UFA. And even Jordy Ben, trade deadline edition, he won't be coming back. But there are positions that need to be filled. And one that we almost don't talk about at all, the all-important backup goalie position. Laurent Brossoit, Kevin Cheveldayoff indicated the other day, is going to test the market. The Jets will not re-sign Brossoit prior to Wednesday. That doesn't mean that they don't during or after Wednesday, but I do think the Jets are exploring other potential options for the backup position. If Laurent Brossoit maybe thinks there's a better opportunity, not behind a perennial Vezina finalist like Connor Hellebuck. So add it all up, and while it may not be huge in terms of the names and the big splash, I do expect Wednesday is going to be extremely busy for the Jets because it has to be. They have a number of spots they have to fill.
Yeah, and you know what? It's funny when we speak about like the fourth line guys. I mean, to be honest, the middle and lower class, I mean, the Jets, because of their situation, may go in and make some aggressive moves and maybe have to overpay a little bit for guys on that first day. But I think the one thing that we've seen, Mike, and it's sort of been telegraphed throughout with the flat cap, is that the value on the free agent market is in that middle and lower class. And often it takes a day, a few days, a week for guys to realize, shit, this is the market. I mean, this is sort of, it is what it is. And then maybe would come around to, to a situation like Winnipeg. When I think about Wednesday, I'm thinking less about who's going to be on that fourth line. I'm thinking, you mentioned Paul Stastny. To me, Paul Stastny is very interesting. I mean, I certainly think he could still help the Winnipeg Jets win hockey games here. Now, it's not going to be at $6.5 million, but I think there would be a spot on a shorter term deal to have Paul Stastny still part of this. I would certainly support that. Would love to see him back. But when you look at the top free agents and the calls that are going to be made at 12:01 or whatever the time that it starts at, to me, there's a couple guys that really stand out. Listen, Dougie Hamilton, I think, is in sort of a different stratosphere. To get Dougie Hamilton to Winnipeg, although, there's been a lot of other defensemen that have sort of moved into these spots. Teams have cap issues. I mean, not everyone's going to be able to afford Dougie Hamilton. No. So, maybe there's an outside shot of the Jets being in conversations with him. But we think about that right side. To me, Tyson Barrie isn't really listen, the guy can score, but he is not really that defensive stalwart that I think the Winnipeg Jets are looking. And you go down, D'Angelo, I mean, he's sort of in another, very talented player that could absolutely help a team win hockey games, but there's so much baggage. It's not really the thing that I think the Winnipeg Jets are into. So you go down, and there's really a couple guys that stand out. David Savard on the right side, who moved from Columbus to Tampa. He'll be testing free agency. And Brandon Montour as well. Another guy, he's 27 years old, plays that right side. To me, having someone that can comfortably move in and play a top four role on the right side as a nice complement to one of those guys in the top three, to me, is the priority. Montour, Savard, kind of the guys that I would think would be at the top of that list. What do you think about that? And anybody else you think that the Jets will be picking up the phone to an agent as early as possible when things get going?
David Savard, absolutely, Huss. And the Jets had interest in David Savard at the trade deadline. And again, the price that you look at what Tampa paid for David Savard, the Jets weren't going to pay that at the deadline. And kudos to the Lightning, right? They were all in. And David Savard, he set up the Ross Colton Game 5 Stanley Cup clincher. He was good in the playoffs, especially. I don't think he did a whole lot during the regular season. I thought as the playoffs went on, David Savard played a bigger and bigger role with the Lightning. But of course, Tampa can't afford to re-sign him. And he is a name for sure that checks off a lot of boxes, I think. And the other thing is, I mentioned that piece Elliott wrote last week about players not wanting to come to Canada. One interesting nugget was that David Savard, who's originally from Quebec, is interested or would be interested in coming to Canada. Now, the Montreal Canadiens, who of course have a hole on their blue line, they just lost, Shea Weber, who's not going to play next season. They have been connected to Savard, and he's from Quebec. That would make some sense. But I do think the Jets will absolutely be in on David Savard, whether, they would probably have to overpay. But I would suggest that's a player that is probably worth, really getting aggressive on. Montour is another interesting name for sure, because, again, that was a player that there was some talk at the trade deadline that the Jets were sniffing around on him. And I'll throw one other one, Huss. I think he's probably a step or a tier below the two that you mentioned. But I do wonder if the Jets do revisit the issue of Travis Hamonic. Who was in Vancouver, and I think the door in Vancouver isn't necessarily slammed shut either. But Travis Hamonic is a guy that we believe would love to play here in Manitoba, his home province. I guess you can ask, how much game is there left in Travis Hamonic? But again, I don't think you're looking at a guy like he signed a 1-year, really cost, team-friendly deal last year. He didn't break the bank. I don't think he will this year either. And so I don't think you're looking at a multi-year, very expensive deal. Could Travis Hamonic come in for a season here and help the Jets? I think the answer probably is yes. And so I do wonder if that's a name that we see resurface as the week goes on.
Mike, what about Andrew Kopp and Neil Pionk? You hearing anything on that? You think that, like, how important is getting some sort of clarity as to where those deals fall in at when it comes to what they're able to spend beginning on Wednesday?
Well, for sure, it's very important, especially if let's just say, to use your point from a few minutes ago, let's say the Jets wanted to get in on the Dougie Hamilton sweepstakes. How aggressive could you really get if you still don't know where Andrew Kopp and Neil Pionk's final numbers are going to fall, right? Like that affects how much money you have to play with. Now, certainly you'd have a projection and a range, but I still think you would really need some clarity, because otherwise, if you misjudge and let's say you go all in like that, I mean, then you really have a problem. Now you've got to perhaps make another move to kind of get out from under it. I don't think it's necessarily a problem if we're talking about depth defensemen and fourth liners, like the Jets, the numbers that they're going to pay for those players. It's not like they need to have it resolved. Now, that being said, is Andrew Kopp and Neil Pionk going to be re-signed by Wednesday? I would suggest that the odds are that neither is re-signed. We are seeing teams certainly re-up with RFAs. I just think these are more difficult, more complex negotiations. The Jets would love to get both guys obviously locked up long-term if they can get the numbers where they want them. I do think Pionk's going to be the easier of the two. I mean, Kopp, of course, they already went to arbitration once. I think they really want to avoid arbitration a second time. If you go to arbitration with Andrew Kopp again, that player is probably gone after one more year, right? He's going to get an arbitration award that's going to walk him right into unrestricted free agency. And good luck signing the guy that you've now fought twice with on a salary. So you'd like some clarity for sure. And you'd like some clarity because if you're not going to re-sign Andrew Kopp, then you better look at trading him. And if you're trading him, is that a piece that brings you back a top four defenseman? If it does, well, now you've got another big hole up front. And how are you filling that? So these things, and Kevin Cheveldayoff talked the other day about so many decisions affecting other decisions and so many balls in the air right now. I can only imagine what the what his office looks like with charts and maps and things like that, projecting this and that. It's a very turbulent time, no question about it.
Yeah, and they're gearing up for what will be certainly a very busy day. And the funny thing about it is, Mike, and especially some GM jobs are different depending on the market and what you have to use cap wise and all of that. But I would imagine it'll be incredibly busy as far as contacting as many of these. And then they sort of realize, who do we realistically have a shot at? Who will consider Winnipeg as an option? And the priority has to be on the blue line. Assumably it is on the right side. And those guys that we mentioned, I imagine, will be getting calls right off the bat. If that doesn't happen, though, then you get back into scouring the trade market. And as you mentioned, Mike, there's been plenty of movement so far. It's not like players haven't been able to be acquired by the deal. But depending on who you're dealing with, you're either trading picks and prospects going forward. That's never really been a big part of the Winnipeg Jets' MO going forward to fill a particular need, which makes it that much more interesting considering the immediate needs they have. But at the same time, some pretty promising players that maybe aren't too far from being in the lineup in the relatively near future.
For sure. And, you'd like to think you have a bit better read on where Heinola and Samberg are in terms of this coming season, right? And are both those guys going to be in the lineup? And you look at the left side, the Jets' left side, Derek Forbert, it would appear is not coming back, right? So you've got Josh Morrissey, you've got Logan Stanley, who you protected, didn't lose in the expansion draft. But let's say, are you projecting that you're going to have Stanley and Heinola and Samberg all somehow in the lineup at the same? That's a lot of youth, right? And those are all guys that would slot in potentially on the left side. So yeah, it's, I go back and forth on what do the Jets need more? Is it the right side? Is it the left side? Forbort, of course, was your second pairing left side defenseman and a very effective left side pairing with Neil Pionk. The Jets use that, I think, for much of the season as their shutdown pair. Now, I believe that, Morrissey DeMello is your true shutdown pair. They certainly did a good job against Edmonton in the first round. And then DeMello, of course, goes down, unfortunately, with that injury in the first shift of game one against Montreal. And I think that, along with the Scheifele stupidity, is what cost the Jets that series. But Tucker Poolman is a guy that was, at times, your number one right side defenseman. So, if Forbort and Poolman both aren't back, like, those are guys that spent a lot of time in the top four. And we were already talking about the Jets needing a top four defenseman even when they had those guys. So it really illustrates the work that Kevin Cheveldayoff has to do here. And, going back to Kopp and Pionk, yes, he's got some money to play with in free agency, but I'm not sure they know exactly how much they have to play with right now. And that's another little wrinkle in all of this.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Could you see Stanley getting an opportunity with Pionk?
I could, yeah, for sure. I mean, maybe, like, is that your top four right now? The four guys we just talked about, is Morrissey DeMello number one, and is Stanley Pionk your number two? And then right now, if you were making a Jets depth chart based on what they have right now, I'd say, yes, that is your top four right now. And then, the other guys under contract, Sami Niku is still under contract. I thought the Jets might move him for a draft pick this past weekend. They didn't. Nathan Beaulieu, of course, is under contract as well. And he was injured toward the end of last season. But to me, Nathan Beaulieu, if you're slotting him in as anything but a seventh or eighth defenseman, then you haven't done your job this offseason. Like, he's a depth guy, sure, but that's all he should be. And then, of course, Heinel and Sandberg. So, I mean, those are the 8 names right now that the Jets have. But so I would say Stanley Pionk, barring other moves that are coming, that probably is your second pair. Now, is that good enough? Is that an improvement over last year? I'm not so sure about that. Stanley, lots of potential for sure, but don't forget, he mostly played in a sheltered third pairing role last year. I suspect that the Jets will try to get him some more responsibility this season, but would that involve a full-time kind of second pairing role? If I'm the Jets, to me, if Stanley's on your third pair this year for most of the season, that's probably the best way to use him, at least for his sophomore season.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly, he'll get more and more of a role on the PK. Although I will say this, listen, I give the Jets credit, the signing of Derek Forbort, they got nice bang for their buck. It's $1 million contract. He played significant minutes along with Neil Pionk, but we really did see the law of diminishing returns from Forbort throughout the season. And I wouldn't have had an issue if they had, gone with a player like Stanley when he was actually showing quite well later on to maybe do that. But, I realize they've been reticent to advance the player too much. And I think you're right. I think, a third pairing along with PK duties is probably where he fits in right now. And again, we're just talking about the way things are. I think everyone expects there to be a player or two that's added once we get through at least the first few days of free agency. And that'll be something we'll be following here. And I know you'll be writing about it on the Free Press throughout the next few days and weeks, Mike. I'd have to ask you about some of these deals on the weekend. What was your reaction when you heard the ticket Seth Jones is going to be earning for the next 8 years in Chicago? I like Seth Jones. I'm not as down on him as some people were after the one season. Definitely could play on my team. But wow, he's now the third highest paid defenseman in the National Hockey League. And I don't know, it seems like Stan Bowman's doing a whole lot of big things right now. Wonder why that is, Mike. It's still not taking a lot of heat off the organization, but wow, what a swing for the fences. A huge price to pay up to get Jones and an absolutely massive financial commitment.
Here's what puzzles me about what the Blackhawks are doing. You hear the term sometimes sucking and blowing at the same time. Are the Blackhawks, are they rebuilding? Are they retooling? They moved Duncan Keith, right? And they have Kane, and Taze is apparently coming back this season, and who knows how effective he'll be after missing a year. Like, they've got this strange, they're giving off vibes that they're not sure what they're really doing here. Like, you either tear it down and sort of go full rebuild, or I guess they're trying to retool on the fly, but now they just committed massive salary and term. And they gave up a hell of a lot just to be able to then pay a massive price, right? Like, I mean, Adam Boquist is a really good player. And like, I don't totally understand what they're doing. I mean, I could say that about a number of teams right now. I see what the Canucks sort of just did, and they shed some dead weight and some salary now that I guess helps them in the next year or so. But now they took on a massive cap hit and a player that certainly law of diminishing returns with Oliver Ekman-Larsson. I mean, maybe he finds some new life with a new team, but yeah, there's a lot of head scratchers going on. I'll say this as somebody who loves chaos and action. Like, we've got no shortage of it, that's for sure. And all this talk that the flat cap was going to create just sort of nothing and just boredom has actually been the opposite. Like, it seems like there's a lot of teams hitting the panic button, or they're not sure where they are in their development phase. So they're kind of trying to do a whole bunch of things at the same time. Makes for some great discussion and debate for sure.
Well, it does. And speaking of cap space, I mean, this is all in the, days removed from the expansion draft. And,
yeah.
We know that Ron Francis didn't have a lot of luck. Well, he had no luck, in fact, in getting NHL GMs to pay his price to decide on what to do. And they valued cap space over everything. When you think about what the value of cap space is right now, and I think specifically to those two trades that Arizona famously made for no return. Andrew Ladd was 2 seconds and a third. Gostisbehere was a second and a seventh. There certainly is a market being established right now on what the cost is to get out of some of these deals.
Right.
And we'll see Seattle do that on an individual basis, I'd imagine, with a few teams. But the Coyotes deal with the Canucks was fascinating on a couple of levels, Mike, in that, they're taking three of the worst contracts in the National Hockey League all in one swoop. The other side of it is they get out of the Oliver Ekman-Larsson deal, who was disgruntled, wanted a change of pace. I'm not as down on him as maybe any others are. $7 million, not a great, you'd still like it to be less. It's the term and how long that deal goes. But from Jim Benning's perspective, I totally get why he made this deal. Takes care of a few mistakes, gets those guys out of Vancouver, gets a really talented young player in Connor Garland as part of this deal. And the bottom line is, this is to make them better today and this year, because let's face it, if they're not better this year, Jim Benning's not going to have a job anyways.
Yeah, and of course they also gave up the 9th overall pick to Arizona, so which I know a lot of people say, well, Connor Garland's a really good player, but they probably just lost a really good potential player in what they would have picked. But for Arizona, it hurts Arizona short term for sure. They're going to be terrible this year, Huss. And Jets fans should be really excited that they're in the Central Division. Right? I mean, they're going, and I don't know what Chicago's going to be like either this year. I don't know what to make of the Blackhawks, but you have two really interesting teams in Arizona and Chicago now within the Jets division. But Arizona, they're not building for next year. They're building for a few years from now. And all those terrible contracts, they expire after next year. So they're trying to set themselves up, obviously, for future success. And again, there's a new arena discussion going on. There seems to always be a new arena discussion in Arizona. But so they're planning for the future. And as you say, Jim Benning, his seat is a lot hotter than it is in the desert right now. But for sure, I mean, Seattle may use them. Ron Francis may use his team now and that cap space, weaponize it, to almost act as a brokerage firm, right? Maybe they take on some bad contracts to teams that want to make other moves but need some financial help. So, I mean, that's what teams with cap space do. Steve Yzerman did that with the Red Wings and has done that with the Red Wings, and they've now reaped the reward. They got a nice piece like Nick Leddy. That's how you that's how you try and get better as quickly as possible. And for the Seattle Kraken, they're trying to build from the ground up. So, yeah, they're a really interesting team to watch here going into Wednesday. I know Jaden Schwartz is a player that it's rumored may already have kind of a verbal agreement with the Kraken, depending on what other moves they make. But, yeah, it adds another wild card to this wild sort of week or two here in the NHL.
Oh, Mike's with us. Hey, by the way, great to see everyone filling up the YouTube chat. If you haven't already, do us a favor, hit that thumbs up button, give us a like. If you're watching on a mobile, you can just close the chat, hit that thumbs up, big help. And if you haven't already, make sure you've hit that red subscribe button and join us daily here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Outside of the Jets, Mike, going into Wednesday, is there a team or two to you that you're particularly intrigued by what they do?
Well, I guess a little closer to home here, Edmonton. Like, I am curious to see what the Oilers are able to do. As they just lost Adam Larson, right? Like a big piece, and are they going to be a team that gets aggressive and tries to fill that spot? Like, they've had a really weird offseason so far as well in taking Duncan Keith, and we don't know what's going to happen with Tyson Barrie. Like, would you even want Keith and Barrie both on your blue line? And they're a team that should be taking the big swing to try and complement the likes of McDavid and Draisaitl. Mike Smith just got re-signed. Sounds like they couldn't get rid of Koskinen's contract. Like, are they going to go into next season with potentially a worse blue line and the same two goalies who are both in the Smith's case? Your number one is now a year older. Like, really? So, yeah, I mean, and Toronto, of course, always curious to see what the Leafs are up to. And, Freddie Anderson and the goalie market. Like, there's another really interesting thing. We talk about Brossoit and the Jets. And, is there a starting goalie job out there for a guy like Laurent Brossoit? I don't think so. But the goalie market should be fascinating, right? Like, look, Carolina, what are they doing? I mean, there's been talk of Antti Ranta or maybe Freddie Anderson. So, there's a lot of really interesting storylines to kind of keep an eye on. But certainly here in Canada, Edmonton and Toronto are two teams that I'm really curious to see, in addition to the Jets, what they do. And then, how the dominoes kind of fall with regards to the goaltender market.
Well, and you know what? The other team I'll throw in there, and I'll be getting a lot of Flames intel this week as I'm doing the big show all week with Pat Steinberg in Calgary on 960. That team, whether they trade Monahan, who do they move off of? Johnny Gaudreau's no trade kicks in on Wednesday. There's been a lot of talk about him, and they're a team that consistently is mentioned as to going after Jack Eichel, although the more I look at, the assets that they have, I'm just not sure they have what it takes to make the deal. But man, you mentioned the loss of Adam Larson. I mean, for crying out loud, Calgary lost Mark Giordano on their blue line. And, it's kind of interesting. There was so much concern about the Jet blue line and, having a player like Dylan DeMello exposed. Both Alberta teams took huge hits on the blue line right now. And as of right now, have not filled massive spots, holes in the lineup.
And it has to hurt that those hits on their blue line came at the expense of a brand new division rival in the Kraken. They'll be able to watch Giordano and Larson play against them a bunch of times this year and potentially be battling for a playoff spot with them, right? Like, that Pacific division is fascinating. Vegas is going to be Vegas, and they probably win the division again by default. But, I mean, after that, like, all three California teams are kind of still in the early stages of a rebuild. Then you've got, Vancouver and Calgary and Edmonton and the expansion Kraken. And don't forget, 3 teams are guaranteed to make the playoffs out of that division. It really opens the door to all kinds of interesting intrigue for sure.
No doubt about it. Well, Mike, listen, thanks so much. This is a great chat. I know you're going to be very busy this week. Really enjoyed the piece today and all the draft coverage on the weekend in the Winnipeg Free Press. What do you have cooking coming up for Jets fans as we head into free agency on Wednesday?
Yeah, so tomorrow I'm going to write sort of a piece identifying some names to keep an eye on and names that I'd like to see the Jets both on the blue line and at the forward position to kind of take a run at. And so I'll have that. And then, yeah, full coverage as the week goes on here. And also would like to weigh in a little later in the week on the Mailloux situation and the Blackhawks and do some more work on that. I mean, some great reporting coming out of Chicago and about Chicago. That's an issue that for sure, Huss, it's important on all of us in the hockey journalism community not to let that story just go away. And so I've certainly got some more planned on that as well going forward.
Mike, really appreciate you joining us. And I know everyone did here in the YouTube chat. Thanks. And we will look forward to everything you got cooking up in the Freep over the next few days.
You bet, Huss. Take care. Enjoy.
By the way, there he is, Mike McIntyre with his brand new Expos hat joining us on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. We've got to get Remis back in here in a minute. Do want to, before we get to some other topics, congratulate Braxton Kuntz of Breezy Bend. Normally we'll do our Breezy Bend report about what's happening in golf, but the biggest thing that happened, certainly here with the course, was the Manitoba Junior Champion and Manitoba Amateur Champion became the Breezy Bend Club Champion. And the Club Championship at Breezy, with the amount of top players they have at the course, is an incredible accomplishment. I think he is a lock for the Manitoba Golfer of the Year, but a big congratulations to Braxton for that big win as the Club Champion, following up his Manitoba Junior and Amateur. If you got some young golfers or you're thinking about a home for the family golfing next year, Breezy Bend Country Club, breezybend.ca. Give Corey Johnson a call, get on that waiting list, and enjoy one of the great golfing spots in Manitoba with that beautiful 19th hole patio, great junior program, ladies programs, and more. breezybend.ca. Assiniboia Downs is back, and tonight we have fans for the first time. And I do know, we'll get to our picks in a minute, I do know that they are going to be firing it up with food trucks downstairs out in the outdoor area. 50% capacity. Everybody double vaxxed. It'll be safe. It'll be majority outside. So if you've been waiting to finally get back to the track like we have, you can get out there beginning tonight. Live racing is on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And I'll talk more about this later on in the week. But the folks at the track did put out a news release today that they are offering a $1 million payout on Manitoba Derby Day coming up next Monday on August 2nd. So it's going to be a huge, huge weekend for racing around the world. And Monday is the Manitoba Derby, the biggest day of the year at Assiniboia Downs, and a $1 million payout for the jackpot pick 5. Find out more. Dining room reservations, VLTs are open. It's all there at asdowns.com. And once again, thanks to our friends at Aikens Lake. Just had an absolutely incredible weekend out there. I did get a note from Pitt that I believe Jeff Mickey, a couple other WST listeners are going to be heading out there. So great choice. It is just a jewel of the province. And big thanks to Pitt for having us out. You can find out more at aikenslake.com. We will get to the Coolbet lines in a moment, and we'll get to our picks as well for Assiniboia Downs. But let's get Michael Remis back in here. And Remo, that was a great chat with Mike. I mean, Mike's one of our guys. We always love talk about him, but, talking with him. But certainly a lot to unpack coming out of draft weekend, both as it pertains to the Winnipeg Jets, the job for Cheveldayoff going forward into Wednesday, as well as everything that happened in a pretty wild weekend in the National Hockey League.
Oh, yes, Huss. No shortage of topics to get to here. It is a busy time of year. Who's getting bought out? Who's getting qualifying offers? Who's signing contracts, making trades? We got a long list of stuff. Didn't even get too deep into the Jets draft picks. I was following the chat. There was a lot of debate early during the Mark Hillier conversation. A lot of people saying, the Jets should have taken Carson Lambos. How could they not? He's from Winnipeg. We need a Winnipeg star. And I kind of agree with that too, but it seems like Chaz Lucius fell, really hard, was consensus ranked much higher, and he seemed to be a good pick. And you also do, I think one thing you don't factor in is, the amount of pressure on a player being the hometown guy, the amount of media requests, ticket requests. I think that's a lot to put on a young player, and eventually I think there will be a player from Winnipeg or Manitoba who plays for the Jets. We haven't really had one since Eric Fair signed, and Derek Meach as well played with, the Moose, and I think he played a bit with the Jets. But it seems like, from what I've read, this Chaz Lucius, has big potential, great shot, big scorer. So I think you have to be pumped with the player that the Jets got in their first round.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, and we had Scott Wheeler on the program heading into the weekend. He just does a phenomenal job prospect ranking, scouting for The Athletic. And if you missed it, go back to my feed on Twitter or Marat's from Friday into Saturday. The piece he wrote on Chaz Lucius, I mean, if you're a Jet fan, and again, this was written a month ago or so heading into the draft, very, very exciting prospect and young man. And I know there was some concerns about the injury, but he came back and was scoring at a point-a-game clip in some pretty good competition once he did return. So I get it. And yeah, I mean, I'm a Winnipeg guy. I would love to see some hometown players. I mean, sometimes I'm jealous of all the great Manitoba talent they've got down in Vegas and on some other teams. But again, when it comes to the draft, you can't really, what does it Chevy say? We don't draft by passport. They've been open to it. They want to get the best players. We would have said they never took Russian players. I mean, they drafted one Russian skater since 2011, and that was Pavel Kraskovsky, a Russian goalie in the Birdman, who's still with the club, and then drafted 2 this year. So I think different situations will dictate the way the team goes. But I think everyone would love to see, a hometown guy or two on the club. But at what expense? I mean, at the end of the day, you want the best player to help you win hockey games first and foremost. And listen, I'm a big fan of Lambos. He had a tough year. His stock did drop somewhat from where he was last year. The other guy, Reem, that I was quite intrigued and interested in as far as the Jets pick goes was the young defenseman Colton Kuberland, I believe his name is, coming out of the AJHL. He ended up going 22nd. Big, strong, right shot defenseman. And I don't know, sometimes I'm focusing a lot on somebody for the right side because of the current situation the team is in right now. But, long gone are the days where you were stacking up Buff and Trouba and Myers on the right side of the Jet defense core. Those guys are all gone now. And it does seem like, there's a bit more of a premium on guys on the blue line playing that right side. Certainly, I think that'll be the case when Winnipeg starts talking to free agents on Wednesday.
Yeah, I think a lot of these draft picks, Huss, I mean, as much as you want a guy to pick a guy and have him come in right away, they were picking for a couple years down the road, and that's what Mark Hillier said in your conversation earlier. And if you did miss it, you can rewind this back to, 25 minutes in where he joined you. But the Jets, as far as defense, I think they're going to be their focus. And we were talking in the chat, I mean, what does their defense look like? Is it Morrissey, DeMello, Pion, Canela, and then Stanley on your third pair? I know you and Mike were debating this as well. And how many defense do they bring in? Elliot Friedman tweeted out that Derek Forbort, he's predicting Derek Forbort to Boston. Now, Elliot Friedman's a guy I trust. He's got a track record. So, maybe it sounds like his time is ending with the Jets. And he played a big role, I think, for the first, half. He was great. And maybe, we talked about this on here, how he could have maybe used a bit of a rest in the second half. But I definitely think he overperformed the contract that he signed here. So we'll see, can they find another guy who can step in? I see people in chat saying Jake McCabe, mentioned David Savard. I know he's been rumored to go to Montreal, but said he would go to a Canadian team. So Wednesday, we'll have all the answers about free agents. Maybe not all, because there's going to be some guys who don't sign. Maybe some veteran guys hold out. But we do know the Jets, need some defense, and also they got a couple of UFA forwards like Stasny and Perreault. And I've seen a lot of people in chat mention a Twitter rumor from an unverified account saying
a Twitter rumor. Bring it. What's the Twitter rumor?
That's
from an unverified account. That's just a great start.
A lot of people. Hey, I'm only bringing it up because a lot of people in chat being, hey, have you seen this rumor? I only trust rumors from verified hockey insiders: Bob McKenzie, Elliot Friedman, Darren Dreger, Frank Cervelle. We all know who they are: Pierre LeBrun,
Mike Commodore,
Andy Strickland. So unless I hear from those guys, I'm not putting a lot of stock into it. So I'm just mentioning that because I have seen people come in chat and say, hey, did you hear this rumor from this account? Like, I don't even know.
So what is the rumor? Just like, considering the source, we know that this is probably, I mean, I'm always in to listen to a rumor. And
I'm always in for
sometimes
rumors.
Laugh at just how ridiculous some of them sound.
Let's see. What was the rumor? Oh, yeah. At NHL Rumors Daily on Twitter. Again, it doesn't have a name.
NHL Rumors Daily.
Somehow
What a
this
great site.
Somehow this account has 45,000 followers. I don't know if they're real or fake. If it's got, so I don't know. Maybe it's on Twitter. It must be true, but
Obviously legit.
Yeah, it says appears there's significant traction. Paul Stastny re-signing with the Jets, awaiting numbers. Again, I don't buy it if it's not from one of those guys.
I hope that's true. I will tell you that. And as I just mentioned to Mike, I have a ton of time for Paul Stastny. I think he's he's important on the ice, and I think he's maybe as important off the ice for the Winnipeg Jets. And, in some ways, he was sort of the conscience of the club. And listen, I know Blake Wheeler's the captain, and Blake is, Blake is Blake. He kind of does his, handles his business as he does, deals with the team and his teammates as he's done. And certainly they love him and what he does as a captain. But Paul Stastny, when we think back to, the frank comments that he had during that terrible slump towards the end of the season, those are the things that sort of need to be said. And, it needs to be said by somebody outside of Blake Wheeler. And I'll tell you what, we talked a lot about this situation at center. I think everyone counting on Pierre-Luc Dubois to have a much better season next year. But, you can't have enough depth at that position. And with everything that Paul Stastny's brought to Winnipeg, I would think that would be a great move for the Jets to be able to pull off if they could get Stastny to commit to sticking around here for another season or two in Winnipeg. Hey, just noticed Brown-Eyed Girl MJD asking, very late question, but did Huss say how the appointment Friday went? Did it go okay? Major field of dental work. Listen, root canals are not fun, but it went well. My doc got it all done in the time allotted. I had a chipmunk face for about the next 24 hours, and now I'm back. So the grill is intact. A special thanks to everyone that popped in the super chat for the Gold Tooth Fund. Still working on fronts going forward for next week for the full grill. But as of right now, feeling much better. Appreciate you asking. Didn't get the gold in. We're working on how the final look is going to be, BA, going forward. Remo, I do want to get to the Coolbet odds. I also want to get to our picks. But before we do, let's quickly talk about the Olympics. First of all, are you into the Olympics? And I would love everyone in chat, if you're with us, have you been watching it? Did it sort of catch up on you once you found it was on? Did you find yourself watching quite a bit of it? Or have you been slow to get in? It's been such a strange lead into the Olympics, and it's been very unfortunate with everything that's happening in Japan and the shutdowns, the no fans, what the athletes are going through. I mean, I know there were a lot of people complaining, it's cancel the Olympics. I'm not there at all. Much like we heard the same people saying that when the NHL was going to play. These athletes deserve the opportunity, especially the Olympians. They work so hard. This is often their one chance to compete on that world stage. And even if it's not an ideal situation, I think they do deserve to it as long as they're, taking all the proper safety protocols. You certainly don't want any big explosion of the virus in the Olympic Village, which there apparently has been some transmission there. That's very concerning. But simply for the athletes, it's important that they get an opportunity to do it. And what a weekend it was. Maggie McNeil, Remo, winning Canada's first gold medal in the 100-meter butterfly. An absolutely stunning final lap from the Canadian, who made the turn in 7th and passed everybody else and got to the turn at the end. It was a great golden moment for Canada on what was a pretty exciting weekend, especially in the pool, as former Lou Marsh winner Penny Alexiak got onto the podium again, silver medal with the relay girls.
Big joke on Twitter, not joke, but the big line is, what a week for the Alexiak family. Jamie signs a deal with Seattle. Penny's winning silver medals, former Lou Marsh Award winner. It's funny, I was watching that Maggie McNeil race on NBC. And they didn't even notice that she was in the race and she had won. I don't even think they showed a camera shot of her till like a minute after the race. They were just focused on the American who didn't win and someone else. So I was watching the wrong. I definitely was watching the wrong feed because my wife and I were watching. We were waiting for Simone Biles, the GOAT, for USA Gymnastics last night. That's what's going on in our household. Gymnastics 24/7. But I watched that. It was an awesome race, good for her. But I got a kick out of the NBC feed. We know they're very pro USA, but they really didn't even acknowledge that she won. It was all about who didn't win. And I thought that was funny. But congrats her. But I got to say, CBC's coverage If you go on their website, they have, you can watch on TV, but on their site, under live, they have a number of different events at any time that you can watch and all the replays. So I do think we're very fortunate to have such great coverage from CBC.
Well, you know what? I will agree. And of course, we've got to give a big shout out to our guy, Tyler Mizlachuk, representing Canada and Winnipeg from Oak Bluff. He finished 15th in the triathlon yesterday. I've never watched a triathlon before, I will admit. I sure as hell have never participated in a triathlon, which will surprise absolutely nobody. But watching those athletes do what they did yesterday. I mean, the guy that won was down on the ground for about 3 minutes afterwards, immediately got up and barfed. And I would say I don't think anyone is more could say they should legitimately be puking in public more than potentially an Olympic triathlete. So it was incredible. And yes, to your point, Reem, I was out over at a local establishment, and I don't think they had it on CBC. I wasn't sure whether they'd have the full coverage anyway, so I got it up on my phone, and it was phenomenal. And listen, I was just amazed. I'm always amazed by the incredible athletes that we have at the Olympics that we don't see very often. Was really hoping that Tyler would have a great race. He certainly did. I'm sure he would have liked to have got onto the podium, but not everybody does. But overall, it was an awesome weekend as we get ready for the Olympics. And tell you what I'm ready for tomorrow. The sport that I'm by far the most into and most emotionally into is the women's soccer. Big game, Canada, Great Britain. I believe it's at 6 or 7 a.m. tomorrow. So hopefully we'll be able to talk about Des Scott and the girls with another big win tomorrow, moving on to the next round. They're 1 win and 1 draw so far in their 2 matches.
Yeah, it is 14 hours ahead, so I think they do a good job on the primetime shows, mixing in what you missed the other night, but then showing some live stuff like the swimming, which seems to take place early in the morning. I did put out a poll here. We can do polls on the YouTube chat. 60 votes of the 260 people in here right now. 53% of the 60 people say they are watching. 47% no. I'm surprised how high that is for no. It is on all the time. They are elite athletes. There are a number of sports. There are some new sports too this year. Skateboarding, getting some love. I think the girl who won, or the people who won, are like 14 years old, which seems insane. Skateboarding. I mean, people were saying, "Why? How is skateboarding Olympic sport?" I mean, well, snowboarding is. What's the difference? And
I watched the girls, I guess it was women's skateboarding, but it was sort of girls because the top 2 were 13-year-old phenoms. It was absolutely insane yesterday. Watching that. Absolutely loved it. Oh, and Malparise, I'm glad you mentioned this. I can't remember what I did earlier, but speaking of soccer, we're focusing on our girls out at the Olympics. Canadian men's national team, big win last night over Costa Rica at the Gold Cup. They're off to the semifinals, and they will take on the Mexicans. I think the game against Mexico is on Thursday. We'll definitely hit on that on the Coolbet odds as we get a little bit closer to the game. But great weekend for Canadian soccer for both of our men's and women's squads.
Yeah, just for some other sports, 3-on-3 basketball in there, and there was also the big joke yesterday morning on Twitter after Team USA lost to France in basketball that Kevin Durant was ready to move over and play for France. Which I got a kick. People were just photoshopping Durant's head on a France player's body with the jersey. I mean, that doesn't get old. I mean, you can rip
nice
that guy.
Parisian cafe, Durant with some cheese, maybe some wine turning into it. It was great. That was such an insane upset. We were talking on the Lock Shop earlier today with Chris Abbott, and he said France was 8 or 9 to 1 as an underdog to win that game. So very rarely will you see a dog bark that loudly, but they did. And that USA team now, between playing before the event and now, is 2-3. So you'd have to think. They are, however, Reem, 41.5-point favorites over the Iranians in their next game. Big revenge game for Team USA, I expect.
Yeah, we'll see if they can, if they can rebound. I know they lost all of their qualifiers. That's a team we're all watching. I know, although everyone on Twitter last night was tweeting about Luka Doncic, who's throwing down for Slovenia, and putting on an incredible performance as well. So, I mean, games, middle of the night, but if you can, stay up late and watch it. The primetime shows, CBC is going nonstop. It is on the other sports channels too. So I'm a big fan of the Olympics, so it's easy, very easy to get in, and maybe we'll see the Lou Marshall Award winner come from, this 2-week stretch here?
Well, probably. That often happens. I can tell you that the voting panel really, in Olympic years, tries to give it to Olympians just because they really don't have that opportunity in most of the other years. General Tom, Durant is taking his talents to France.
Yeah.
That is wonderful. Hey, if you're with us, by the way, give us a thumbs up there. Could use a few more if you don't mind. So, Reem, let's get to it. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's get to the Coolbet odds for today. And this is a first, Reem. If you go to the Coolbet site, look on the left, and you'll see NFL, MLB, NBA Draft, 3 Olympic things, and then, lo and behold, the Lock Shop boosted odds partner parlay.
Where?
There. Well, just go to the main site. No, just click on the main front page. There you go. Now go down on the left. You will see the options. Oh, it's right there. You just passed it. Reem. Right there. The Lock Shop, right beside Olympic basketball.
The Lock Shop. It's right here.
There it is. Click on it. And you will see our pick today. So if you haven't seen the Lock Shop, I'll make a pick. Dustin Nielsen makes a pick, and Coolbet Chris makes a pick, and we put it together into a parlay. So today's picks, Dusty's got the Twins. I'm rolling with Ohtani and the Angels, and Chris is on the Canada men's rugby sevens. That bet normally, if you put those 3 in, I think comes into about plus 265, plus 270, but they boosted the odds for us, so it's plus 310. I'll be making that right now. If you want to ride with us, just simply click on that boosted partner parlay, and you will get a much better number than if you made it yourself. And if you haven't bet at Coolbet before, use promo code WST on your first deposit, and you'll get a bonus of 100% up to $200. That's promo code WST. Other things to get into, we did on the Lock Shop, Olympic golf, made some picks on that. The other story with the Olympic golf, Remo, speaking of the odds, it was good if you got in early on some guys, because the odds got shaken up big time with John Rahm and Bryson DeChambeau both testing positive for COVID. John Rahm,
what's
he
been
just
doing?
tested positive 2 weeks ago, or a month ago, 2 months ago. He came back and got it again, and he was really unfortunate. They're both out. So now Morikawa is the favorite. I was on Hideki Matsuyama at 18-1. He's now 13-1 as some of those numbers have come down. But if you don't want to get it, I believe that gets going on Wednesday. So you can get to it. All the odds there available at Coolbet. But if you want to get in on our Lock Shop boosted partner parlay, you'll have until about 6 o'clock tonight when the baseball games start, boosted to plus 310.
I will say, before we move on, I love how DeChambeau withdrew and they replaced him with another real likable guy in Patrick Reed. That's the best. It's like in wrestling, like some heel can't go in the main event. They got to put in another heel to replace him.
That's exactly right. And listen, I could totally see Patrick Reed showing up and winning it too. He's just that type of guy. And not an easy guy to cheer for, but certainly a hell of a golfer. They're back at the post tonight. Fans allowed. Got to have your vax proof, but you can get in there 50%. I imagine we'll get to see a lot of people coming out in the next few weeks to see some live racing. Remo, let's get to our picks for today's races for our season-long duel at the Downs. Where are you at right off the bat? You've got your picks good to go?
I'm good to go. Let me bring the picks in. The new HPI bet website in all white. And I am going, let's see, race starting off. Oh, shit. I screwed up one of mine. Hold on, I bet. Well, here, I'll tell you what I'm going to do.
Okay, here, I can give you mine while you get yours ready. Yeah. I've got bets on the first 4 races. And who knows, maybe a couple later ones if I do half decently in the first one. Starting off with race number 1, I'm putting a $2 win bet on Gavin, who is number 2. Moving on to the next race, I think I'm taking the selections, the program selections, the top 3 ranked horses, and doing the $1 triactor wheel, $6 bet, Drizzy, Call Me Richard, and Witt's Dollar Night. So that's race number 2. My big bet is going to be number 3. I'm putting half the stack. I'm putting $10 on a 1-2 Quinella Extrema and Alberta Sun. Very chalky pick, but hopefully it can win, maybe double the money or so. And then the final bet of the 20, every time you get with it, race 4, not a lot of track history on most of these races. So it's horses, I should say, a little bit more of a crapshoot. So we're going to go with Jeannie Deans and Hatshepsut. 3 and 6, put it that way. $2 on the Quinella. Those are my $20 of bets today, and hopefully we'll get some winners. Where are you going, Reem?
Let me just double check. I gotta replace one of mine, but I am on a similar thing to you here. I have what did I do? Okay, good. I'm good. I gotta make another $3 bet, but I'll show you where I went. I did race 2, very similar to you. Let me just bring this up better in 1 sec. Okay, I'm gonna do this. Race 2, very similar to you. I'm on Drizzy, Call Me Richard, and Hoochie Coochie Sam. I did the $1 triactor box, and then I did another $1 triactor box on race 3. I like, who do I like here? Alberta Sun, Extrema, and My Princess Ellie. And then I did a Quinella on race 6, 8, and 4, double time, and Bear Me a Moment. So I will need those horses to finish first and second. So I have $3 left that I got to find, put on someone to go. But those are my picks.
Oh, Matt Lang's with us in the chat. Just back to the golf for a minute. Xander winning the Olympics would be the most Xander thing ever. Yeah, Xander Schauffele's right there behind Colin Morikawa. I believe he's 9-1 if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, 9-1. So your favorites, Morikawa at 8, Xander's 9, Justin Thomas 11, and then Vic Hovland, Hideki, and Rory McIlroy all at 13. And yeah, there's the bad guy, Patrick Reed, 20-1. Back to the horse racing. If you do want to play with us, go to hpibet.com and you can wager on Assiniboia Downs and tracks all around the world. But don't forget, the food trucks are out. Fans will be back tonight for the first time on the main area and the outdoor terrace for the first time this season over at Assiniboia Downs. Great show today, Reem. And I guess, we should, before we go, once again, big thanks to Paramount Services, our newest sponsor. If you're looking for a gig, they're looking for technicians and much more, go to ParamountServicesLTD.com and check out the careers section. You can also go to our website, click on their site on the sponsor page, and it'll take you right there. Royal Sports, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, Not AutoCorp, Little Brown Jug. Don't forget, free delivery up until the 31st, free home delivery using the promo code WST100. Big thanks to Dustin and the gang for stepping up with that. Of course, Boston Pizza, Assiniboia Downs, Aikens Lake, Breezy Bend. Congratulations to Braxton Kuntz again. What a season he's had. Breezy Club champ, Manitoba Junior champ, Manitoba Amateur champ, and Coolbet Canada. And you can still get that lock shop boosted odds partner parlay with the Twins, Angels, and Canada's Rugby Sevens up until they throw the first pitch tonight. Remo, great start. And, again, thanks to everyone. 100 episodes. It's sort of flown by. Can't wait for the next 100 and the next 100 after that. But we wouldn't be able to do it without the sponsors that I just mentioned. And, of course, everyone for popping in and making us a part of your day every day on Winnipeg Sports Talk. And Reem, I imagine the rest of this week is going to be wild. We've got free agency coming up on Wednesday. We will speak with Mark Morrison, the new head coach of the Manitoba Moose, tomorrow. We'll check in on Bomber training camp. We'll have more on the Gold Eyes. Tickets go on sale tomorrow for Gold Eyes season. The Fish are back August 3rd. And then, Remo, we're going to have this crazy week. We'll go into August long weekend, come back with the show on Tuesday, 48 hours away from Blue Bomber kickoff and the CFL returning on the 5th of August.
Yeah, it is a long weekend, so we'll have to get our might have to get our CFL fantasy DraftKings pool ready. I saw some people talking about the TSN one as well, but I prefer the DraftKings scoring and lineup system. So I can't wait for that. And yeah, Gold Eyes, Assiniboia Downs is in the chat saying they got food trucks. So lots going on. I know I see Rick Delane, who's got our logo on his car. He'll be at the racetrack Thursday. Lots going on in the city in terms of the sporting environment.
Yeah, here's a Winnipeg. If you want to be a returning to the wild Winnipeg sports fan, map out this itinerary. Check out the track one of these days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Reintroduce yourself to Assiniboia Downs. Thursday night, go see Rick Delane and the Sports Talk Winnipeg car out there, the Winnipeg Sports Talk car at Victory Lane Speedway. Next Monday, back at the track, August 2nd, for the biggest race of the year, the Manitoba Derby. Tuesday, Goldeyes home opener, Shaw Park. Maybe even another Goldeye game on the Wednesday. And then the Friday, a big tailgate, getting there early, showing your card, showing your ID, getting in, and welcoming back the 2019 Grey Cup champs to begin the 2021 CFL season. We've been waiting a long time for this. How good of an itinerary does that sound?
Yeah, wow. That sounds awesome, man. But you mentioned Friday for the Bomber game. Thursday is the home open.
Yeah, Thursday. Did I not say that?
No,
yeah,
you said Friday. I knew you meant Thursday.
I may be screwing up. Yes, I will not be showing up one day late for the game.
I just wanted to make sure. I know you know what day. I know you meant Thursday.
Yeah, Monday is Derby Day. Tuesday is Fish home opener. Tuesday and Wednesday, you can go to the ballpark, and then Thursday as well if you're not able to go to the Bomber game. But I think we'll be able to have our cake and eat it too. Support all our teams, and man, before we know it, the Jets will be back and playing come October. So it's great stuff. Hopefully more going on in the National Hockey League tomorrow. We will be all over it, getting you ready for free agency on Wednesday. We may have an expanded show. If the Jets do something in the first couple hours of free agency, we'll probably jump on early. But we will certainly be on at our regular time at 1 o'clock if we haven't started early, depending on what happens with the Winnipeg Jets. That's going to do it for us, folks. All week long, if you want to tune in, I'll be on Sportsnet 960 in Calgary with my pal Pat Steinberg. Be jumping on there in about an hour till about 6 o'clock our time. So you can just hit that up online. And otherwise, we'll see you back here tomorrow for another edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Have a great night. Thanks to everyone in chat. Thanks to everyone listening on the podcast. Thanks to all the sponsors. We'll see you tomorrow here on WST. Have a great night.
Oh, my God. Oh! Shut it down. Let's go home.
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.